Chapter 6, Hacker's Test, 1 to 5. Listen to a conversation between a professor and a student. Hi, Dr. Hansen. Maurice told me you wanted me to drop by your office at this time. Is that right?
James. Yes, thanks so much for coming. There's something I really wanted to discuss with you.
Is this about my paper, ma'am?
As a matter of fact, it is. Don't look so concerned, James. Your writing was wonderful. The content was most interesting. Racial tensions in the Andalusia region of southern Spain. But what I really wanted to discuss with you was more about your writing skills.
My writing skills?
Yes, James. I really think you should consider joining the writing club. You know, the one established by the English department a couple years ago. Do you know about this club?
Well, yes. I've seen some of their writings in the campus newspaper. The writers are pretty good, although I can't say that I'm really qualified to judge. Well, I thought they were pretty good.
You can write like that too. Probably even better.
Oh, I don't know about that, Dr. Hansen.
No, I'm serious, James. Just hear me out. Let me tell you more about this club. It's made up of students who have been recommended by their professors for their exceptional writing abilities.
But I've never actually enrolled in any writing course, so I can't say for sure that I've got what it takes to be a writer. So, does the club hold regular meetings?
They get together twice a week in the evenings, in one of the reading rooms at Memorial Library.
Well, that's great and everything, but what exactly do they do at those meetings?
Okay, well, actually, I've never been to one of their meetings, but I know for a fact that they discuss both old and new pieces of writing.
You mean by other writers?
Yes, other writers, but also their own writings. And they sponsor occasional lectures by visiting writing professors.
Well, the club seems to be pretty well established if they've got professors giving lectures. Just how big is the club now?
I believe they currently have a membership of, I think 17 students. And yes, I wanted to point out that they receive information about upcoming regional and national seminars on writing, as well as writing competitions.
Writing competitions? Wow, that's really interesting.
So, the club is just basically meant to create an opportunity for talented young writers to grow.
It really sounds exciting, and I'm glad you think I have what it takes to be a good writer. But to be honest with you, I've already got my hands full. I'm presently involved in 2 organizations, the Anti-Prejudice Forum and the Student Council, and they take up all of my free time. And I've got 21 credits this term.
All right, I see. I do understand, but if you do find the time, I'd be happy to recommend you. The offer is always open.
Thanks, Dr. Hansen. I'll get back to you about it. But right now I've got to run to Spanish 203. Now, there's a subject I'm far from exceptional in. Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. 1. What is the main topic of the conversation? Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question. Is this about my paper, ma'am?
As a matter of fact, it is. Don't look so concerned, James. Your writing was wonderful.
2. What does the professor imply when she says this?
Don't look so concerned, James.
Three. How does the student feel about becoming a member of the writing club? 4. According to the conversation, what are 2 activities the members of the writing club do? Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question. It really sounds exciting, and I'm glad you think I have what it takes to be a good writer. But to be honest with you, I've already got my hands full. I'm presently involved in 2 organizations, the Anti-Prejudice Forum and the Student Council, and they take up all of my free time. And I've got 21 credits this term. 5. What can be inferred about the student?
Six to 11. Listen to part of a lecture on environmental science. The professor is discussing introduced species. I guess it's time. Let's get started. We're going to talk a bit about introduced species. You know, this is actually an important issue in many areas of the world. Can anyone tell me what an introduced species is?
Is it a species that has been released into an area by humans?
Sometimes, but not necessarily. The term introduced species is simply used to refer to any non-native species that enters an ecosystem. Okay, they can be brought in by people and by the forces of nature, like the wind. Introduced species are also known as exotic species, naturalized species, or, if they've become pests, they're called invasive species. Today, we are going to examine the impact that an introduced plant species has had on an ecosystem. Actually, it's very common for people in the United States to import plants from other continents. This is because the local plants are often not considered decorative enough. So plants from other regions are brought in, and sometimes they have problems adjusting. They may require more water than is available, for example. However, they often prosper too well, resulting in a negative effect on native species. One such plant is the Russian olive, which was introduced to central and western United States in the 19th century as an ornamental. Let me describe this plant to you. It's a perennial shrub, meaning it has a life cycle of 2 or more years. It's a very attractive plant with thick, silvery foliage. And people like the plant because it's dense, so it's ideal for use as a hedge. The plant was well suited to the climate, and it thrived and soon became a common addition to many people's lawns. As with all exotic species, as long as the Russian olive was confined to areas of human habitation, it posed no threat to the surrounding ecosystem. The problem is, the fruit of this tree proved, popular with many birds, resulting in its seeds being deposited into the wild. This proved to be a disaster, because this plant is able to outcompete the native species. It consumes a high proportion of the available groundwater, which leaves little of this resource for other plants. In addition, the dense shade produced by the Russian olive's foliage makes it almost impossible for the saplings of other trees to mature. As the Russian olive is able to grow in almost any type of soil, it spreads rapidly. In fact, the only natural restriction on its potential habitat is a need for a lot of sunshine, which has led to its invading the southwestern portion of the country. So, although introduced plants are often visually appealing, they usually negatively impact the ecosystem. That is why many environmental groups are now trying to discourage this practice by promoting native species as symbols of their respective regions. Whether this will succeed remains to be seen. Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. 6. What is the main topic of this lecture? Seven. Why does the professor mention the wind? Eight. What can be inferred about introduced plants? Nine. According to the professor, what is one negative effect of the dense shade produced by the Russian olive? Ten. According to the professor, what is a reason the Russian olive grows well in the southwestern United States?
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
So, although introduced plants are often visually appealing, they usually negatively impact the ecosystem. That is why many environmental groups are now trying to discourage this practice by promoting native species as symbols of their respective regions. Whether this will succeed remains to be seen. 11. What can be inferred about the professor?